the Grimoire campaign setting for Spheres of Power, world-building semi-contest that wraps up today is what inspired this. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Today we're talking about character creation, and that's going to include races. Today we'll talk about humans and Bóreans. So in the beginning, all were animals, and all animals were considered zoe, or alive. There was no distinction between them. After the strangers came, however, the animals saw how they were different from these new beings and began to see the differences among one another. It could be said, therefore, that the strangers unintentionally introduced the concept of race to Athanasia. Very deliberately, however, the strangers introduced a new skill that would divide the zoe from one another: transfiguration, or the alteration sphere. After the strangers taught the animals how to change their shapes to look more like them, there arose a group of zoe who could match the stranger's form with perfection. These were called the humans. These zoe who could not fully master the stranger's teachings became the anthropomorphic or animal races. Some animals deliberately chose to remain zoe, and the descendants of these are the animals that persist to the current era. The other two groups, however, the humans and the animal races, now consider themselves separate and distinct from one another. In some circles, especially among dendrites who believe themselves to be the literal descendants of the strangers, this point can be one of great contention. Humans and any of the animal races work best in Grimoire. Stats for halflings could be used, but they would be culturally accepted as very short humans, transformed from smaller animals, rather than as a separate race. So you would use the substitutions in each of these race sections that I'm about to talk about from the Advanced Races Guide for the races of Athanasia. First group, humans. Humans are predominantly located in the kingdom of Eusoria, though they have many towns and villages throughout Athanasia. Eusoria is governed by a human king and queen, as well as the Athanasian Council, a board of advisors from each of Athanasia's most prominent animal races. The Athanasian Council elects and replaces the king and queen as often as it deems necessary. The council members, in turn, are appointed by popular consent by the members of their race. Notable exceptions are the Draconians, Fenrir, and Meros, who reject human government and thus do not have members on the Athanasian Council. Being elected to their positions rather than inheriting them from noble family members, Eusoria's king and queen are rarely married to each other and are otherwise unrelated. Notable members of the human race are the current king and queen of Eusoria, named Inuksuk, whose name means the right path, and Idris Frida Kamutik, whose name means ardent lady of the peaceful sleigh. Adapting humans to the Spheres of Power campaign setting, and specifically to Grimoire, there are no special rules for using humans in Grimoire, except that players may use the stats for halflings and still count as human. When used this way, halfling, the language, still functions and counts as a distinct language, but it's culturally accepted as a pidgin of common, used among the wee ones, as the humans call them. The human spellcasters are equally likely to use any sphere of magic, so you would refer to the class section for more information about what spheres any particular character might be interested in using if they were human. All right, so now on to the Bóreans. The Bóreans are mole folk who keep mostly to their tunnels and mines, known collectively as Borea caverns. They spend the vast majority of their time crafting useful items from earth, stone, and metal. They are notably the only race permitted to mine Pyrium from the eye of the world and manufacture Pyrium circlets for the Seraphim in return. In light of the dangerous wonderkinder posed to Eusoria, the human king and queen have a standing order with the Bóreans for Pyrium torques and bracelets designed to diminish a wonderkind's unintended magical outbursts. So notable members of the Bórean race include Alcandros, whose name means hardy strength. He is the bearer of Chthonios, the Tomb of Rebirth, one of the 5 staffs of power. He was also a founding member of the Council of the World Soul and the Tetrassemblea, both of which are now disbanded, and he currently sits on the extant Wizards Tribunal. Adapting Bóreans to Grimoire, Bóreans use stats for Duergar, except they have a burrow speed of 20 feet. They lose all their Duergar special abilities. Bóreans have the Bórean subtype and their own language instead of Dwarven, and the Bórean spellcasters favor the nature sphere and the earth-themed packages and talents. All right, so that wraps it up for this part 3 of our Grimoire guide. So I hope to see you for part 4. Thanks for watching.